about the so-called Rennes le Chateau mysteries. You know, it's also been called the Da Vinci Code mysteries, and related to the Templar mysteries and the Merovingian bloodline mysteries, and all kinds and the mysteries of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And before we get started, I do want to reach out to everyone and remind everyone that calling for a big meetup to anyone who can, all those researchers and authors and genuine Rennes mystery buffs to come to Southwest France in the first couple of weeks of May. Especially the first week, might be having some activities planned depending on the prospective interest and, you know, the number of people that might be coming. Definitely going to do a screening of my film Bloodline, which will be in May. It will be the 10th anniversary of the release of Bloodline, which is just crazy to think about. But we're going to be there in almost positively the director of the film, Bruce Burgess, will be there, and he and I will be answering questions after the screening about our investigation, what preceded it, and the investigation, and also what happened afterwards, the big hoax, the big controversy, the fallout from that. So we'll be taking questions and hopefully not too many rotten tomatoes after that screening. But also, I know that my guest tonight is checking her schedule to see if it's a possibility that she is going to be over there at that exact same time. And I'm hoping that's true, because I know a lot of you would want to meet up with her because she's not only an author and a researcher, she's also an intuitive. She does do private sessions. Also, if she's there and if there's enough interest, you know, I'm definitely going to try to corral her into putting together a Magdalene circle while we're there. And then if we do have an interest in a day's events, I will get her to speak. Now, you guys have probably figured out by now who I'm talking about. My guest tonight is my good friend and friend of the show, Gloria Amendola. Hey, Gloria.
Hey, Renee. Thanks for having me.
You know, I've just been percolating all week ever since we decided that this was going to be the week we were going to do a sort of Rennie roundup or Ren update. And things have just, you know, popping in as they do. And as I was getting ready for the show and putting out notice on Facebook and around and posting it, I was thinking about, well, what is it, you know, that we're going to do, and what is it that we do? And, you know, we sort of blend a lot of different stuff together in order to get at the heart of the matter. And I think in the end, that may be where it's all at, is a blend of not only science, but spirit or intuition, or both of those things, history, and it's just a blending of those modalities that I think could, in the end, get us right to the heart of it, because I think there are some secrets there that, in order to get to the true center of those, you got to do more than just read. What do you think?
Oh, I think so. I mean, you know me, I'm into the shamanic journey. I'm into the vision. I'm into using the intuitive skill set just as much as the hardcore research, especially with the Rennes mystery and the pathway of the Grail. I just don't know how you can separate the two. You know, we've been in the landscape so many times together, and it really forces you to go beyond, to step outside of the box. I don't think there's any way you can experience Rennes le Chateau, that whole area, if you don't step outside of the box.
Oh, the glories of live radio. And we're back with Gloria Amendola. Sorry about that. I think the problem is on my end with my connection here. So I did a little fiddling around and applied a little bit of my technical genius, ha ha ha. And hopefully the connection is a little bit more solid. But gosh, Gloria, if you could just go back, because there was so much of that, I don't know if everyone got, I know I didn't get it, but you were talking about, you know, I did hear you say you and I have been in the region many times, and that's about as far as I got. So if you could go back over and just explain what you were talking about.
Sure. I was saying that we've walked the landscape quite a lot, you and I. We've talked. When we used to stay in Ingrid's old place, which to me was the portal energy of Rennes le Chateau, on top of the village. I mean, we would have weird experiences. We would go over to the churchyard in the dark at night on a full moon. I would channel. We would have dreams. So when you were talking about the intuitive part of this, of acquiring impressions, I think the intuitive part of this mystery is what catapults you forward. I think you have to be able to slip from the left brain of strictly research and feel the land and dream it and vision it, because it's very alive. It's very creative. It does very well with that aspect of ourselves. It really helps. So yeah, I definitely think you need to use your intuitive side.
You do, and I think more and more, in science, in study of science, we're beginning to realize. I mean, even Albert Einstein said, that intuition was imperative in science. So I think we're beginning to get that that's not some woo-woo thing. That is something that, is an actual tool and a skill and something that we can use. But for a lot of people out there, I know there are some true Rennies listening, but also for people that don't know a lot about this area that we're talking about. We keep referring to Rennes le Chateau. You'll hear us talk about RLC, Rennes le Chateau. And that is a tiny, tiny hilltop village in southwest France. And at the turn of the century was born a mystery of that area involving the local priest at the local church, the Church of Mary Magdalene, by coincidence or not, in the region, where he suddenly became wealthy. It was said that he we know he dug under the church, and it was said that he found either some kind of great treasure or some kind of precious documents, something that caused him to become fabulously wealthy, made lots of improvements to the area, including roads, the water tower, buildings, redecorated the church in a rather kind of bizarre way, with some sort of Masonic symbolism and lots of other kind of symbolism in there as well. And then from that mystery, it sort of harked back or called attention to other mysteries involving history and a royal bloodline and treasures that were purported to be in the area that were brought there by the Knights Templar after they sacked Rome and brought down the Visigothic treasure and the treasures of Rome. So there's all kinds of stories that swirl around this little village that really didn't come to us publicly in a big way until the year 1982, and with the publication of a book by three authors, Bagent, Lee, and Lincoln, called The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, which in America was shortened to Holy Blood, Holy Grail, as we like to shorten things up and abbreviate things here. And in that, the little village of Rennes le Chateau was mentioned, and it sparked a mystery that has brought hundreds of thousands of people over the years to that area, and even more so once Dan Brown picked up on the mystery, picked up on what Bagent, Lee, and Lincoln were saying, and wrote the largest selling novel of all time, The Da Vinci Code. So all this swirls around this teeny tiny village with about 50 permanent residents. So, but every year people flock to it, as I do, as Gloria does. We've taken groups there. Gloria continues to take a lot of groups to that area. And it's just amazing. I've never been to such a place that has so many features that you could go out every single day for a month and just drive, a half hour out, and you still wouldn't cover all the ground. So, okay, that's my little story of the area of Rennes le Chateau. It's also known for its telluric energy, it's the curative waters of Rennes le and the surrounding areas. So there's a lot there, a lot of history, a lot of mystery. And Gloria and I can't seem to stay away. And so we continue our research into the heart of that mystery and keep going deeper and deeper. And sometimes it takes us in directions we don't really want it to go. Right, Gloria?
It's true. And you know how you were asking me about the intuition and the Rennes mystery. And I had, when we spoke a few days ago, I said, wow, if I can find that channeling, that short channeling that was done by the Tour Magdala or the Tower of Magdalene before I left this past September in France, I'd like to read some of it on the air. I have channeled Bérenger Saunière, the priest, the mysterious priest, in what I consider probably the most current timeline of the mystery. I know there's one afterwards, but focusing on Saunière, his housekeeper and, or in my opinion, lover, a woman that he truly loved, Marie Denarnaud. It was her I actually channeled when I was looking at my notes here. And she has a few things to say about Saunière and what he found. So this was September 2017, and it's just an excerpt, and it just, maybe it'll just take us into tonight's show. So I'm channeling this, I'm setting it up. It's a small group, people I know well, Christy, little Jimmy, who's not so little anymore, Kim, Magda, Jane, not sure if anybody else was there. It was who was there at the moment, because I felt the energy coming in really strong by the Tour Magdala there and in Saunière's domain. So Marie comes through and she says, these is just a few little snippets. She said, Bérenger, so that's Saunière the priest, Abbé Bérenger Saunière, Bérenger was always looking for the truth. And what he found was much more than he ever thought he would find here. Yes, he was looking for treasure, and he was looking for information that the Templar Knights were said to have retrieved from Jerusalem. When the papers were found, we did not know how to translate them, never mind their meaning. Let me repeat that. This is Marie talking. When the papers were found, we did not know how to translate them, never mind their meaning. Bérenger made several trips abroad, visiting those who could help him decipher this mystery. It is much more than you can imagine, even at this time.
You know what that makes me think about? That makes me think about what we've been talking about lately in this more into the energy and the possibility of a technology there in the area. Not only maybe an actual machine or a device of some kind, which we can speculate as to what that would be, but we're talking about some sort of energy situation, whether that could be the Ark of the Covenant, or do you get the sense lately when we've been talking about this and about the idea of there being some sort of device in the region, do you think it's the Ark of the Covenant, or do you think it's something completely different? Or is that anybody's guess?
I think oh God, this is a tough one, because this goes into a layer of the mystery that it's like you sense it's there, but you're almost scared to say what you think because of all the craziness around Rennes le Chateau. But for me, and in my travels in England and Scotland and Wales and everywhere else where the sacred geometry and the Templar imprint is on the landscape, so it's measurable. You know, like Henry, our beloved Henry Lincoln, his work with Bornholm in Denmark and the Templars. And, of course, there's the landscape 5.15 in the UK that the Templars measured out on the earth in these particular numbers. I'm going to throw something out there, and I'm not saying it's correct, but it's at least something that I've been considering for a few years. I've shared part of it with you. I'm just going to put it out there and we'll go from there. Whatever. It sounds crazy, but it's my feeling. And this came through channeling Mary Magdalene on the Lower Plateau in Rennes le Chateau, that the Rennes area was terraformed, if you will, and that the measurements are so precise, connected to this golden ratio that Henry talks about, that there are five-pointed stars in the landscape in other places, but it's the way in which they interplay on the earth there. It's really unique, and you can feel it when you walk there, when you drink the water. There's something heightened. It's a heightened life energy. It's a heightened with the telluric currents. So I've been wondering for 2 years, was this landscape visited upon? We have Bugarash Mountain very close to there with all the alleged UFO activity, or some kind of activity that's going on. Was the area truly terraformed to such proportions? And if and when that could be true, did the next timeline of human beings that would stumble upon that area somehow try to understand it in their terms? Finding an advanced technology and understanding it are two different things. If you stumble upon something, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there definitely, there are things there that we know are there, but yet we don't have the full explanation for yet. And, maybe we will, maybe we won't. But definitely, but this idea of this, terraformer, certainly, a purposeful geometry in the landscape itself there is something that's, being tossed around. And that's how I came across Theo Pageman's book on the inventor John Worrell Keely that I mentioned to you the other day. And now we've both ordered it. I think yours is coming sooner than mine.
No, I got it. And I actually started reading it. I have quotes for tonight. Yeah.
Oh, I don't have mine yet. So you're ahead of the game. So but in it, I was, browsing through what I could do, on Amazon or whatever it was, how they'll give you a few pages. And I saw that he mentioned Rennes le Chateau and the telluric energy there, the geometry in the area. But this was all about an inventor in the United States in the late 1800s, living at the same time as Saunier, who was working with, on free energy. And he had some amazing stuff, but he was also working with this idea of science and sort of spirit or intuition. And the author, Theo Pageman's, brought in, the idea of Rennes le Chateau as sort of an example of science, and he says science and religion. I get what he means. But anyhow, when I mentioned that to you, you clicked on that, and then you immediately found something else, and that was about this so-called device in the area.
And what they also mention, and this is in the back of the book, I just got it last night, and I was able to go through some pages today. It's towards the very end of the book where some really interesting connections are made. So it also includes making connections into literature and books that were written. So, of course, they reference Jules Verne. They reference the famous and very, very wealthy Astor of New York and Newport, and his book the one that went down on the Titanic. And I know there's conspiracy theories about that with that particular Astor, but he was involved in this. And so they were all writing these novels, these coded novels, to put forth different ideas, and whether it's based on the Rennes mystery or spin-offs of the Rennes mystery. It's some very intense occultist names, and what they're coming up with, it's almost hard to wrap my brain around what they're really saying, because they're talking about time anomalies. They're talking about reversing time. They're talking about energies that seem to emit from unusual and complicated and powerful devices.
Wow. That seems to be a theme that's now in our wheelhouse that just keeps coming around again and again. And oh, by the way, I am in contact now with Theo Pagemans, the author of that book, and
cool.
I have sent him an invitation to come on this show. So if he's coming, I'll let you know for sure, because I'm sure you'll have some questions for him. And
here's a quote in the book. It's a paragraph. He says, "The year before Lovecraft penned the tale, The Rats in the Walls," in which he describes a large cavern beneath an old manor house where time is warped into reverse. In connection with Rennes le Chateau, it is alleged that hidden in the region, a device might be located that can only be described as a time portal.
Wow.
In 1923,
so it might not be a device as in a machine of some kind, but an actual...
Yeah, I don't really know, but how many times have we walked, around the Church of Mary Magdalene, the garden area there, that one concentrated area, and I know when I've stayed there, I've had dreams of the portal there. I remember my mom, who was deceased, came to me in that portal area. This was years ago, and she was able to show me kind of the boundaries. And I remember in my pajamas, I got up and I walked into the Saunière's grotto there in the garden of the church, and I sketched it all out while it was fresh in my mind. And the reason, and that came through a dream, and the reason why it was so powerful to me is because my mother, for whatever reason, and those who do intuitive work really understand this, was a young soul. So even though she died, a lot of people come to me who are crossed over, but my mother could rarely come, and I couldn't understand it. And it seemed as if she didn't have almost the spiritual, paranormal, psychic power, whatever it is when people cross over, to communicate with me. But when I slept in the area of the portal, right by the church there, some people call it Narnia, right? My mother was able to come through, and we were able to hug in the dream time, and it felt real. And every time I said, "Mom, I was so excited in the dream to see her," I'd say, "Come here, I want to show you." And I'd be walking towards the Tor Magdala, and I'd get to a certain point, and I would turn around and I'd say, "Come on, Mom." And she would look at me and she would say, "I can't go that far." And I began to understand as I walked around, she could only stay in that concentrated portal energy. That's what came through in my dream. And I tested her in my dream all the way around that area to see where she could step in and where she couldn't step out. Her spirit wasn't coalesced strongly enough. So there again, that's using a dream to really show me, which probably something I couldn't handle if in waking reality. It just, it might have been too emotional for me. I don't know. But in that, and they're talking about, in this book, they're talking right at that area, something about a time portal.
Wow. Well, that, we've talked about that many times. In fact, I posted a picture of that pathway leading up to the Grand Rue, such a grand name for such a tiny street that leads into Rennes le Chateau. And I posted on it, entrance to the portal, because we've always talked about that road right there being the place. And I remember the first time I was in Rennes le Chateau after my daughter's passing. And I went into the church and I just became overcome with, obviously I was grieving. And, but I had this real urge to go out and to stand right there in that pathway. It was sort of between the corner there where Ingrid's apartment, and for those that know the village, it's Ketty Corner from Port Our Rent bookstore. And the church. It's that path right there. And for some reason, that area offered me a lot of comfort, and I'm not sure exactly why, or I wasn't at the time. But then all this stuff started coming up about the portal and your visitation from your mother, the dream you had about me and you and my daughter's children walking up the path. So it's become symbolic of a portal. And of course, at the end of that pathway is the doorway to the Church of Rennes le Chateau, which is the inscription above it translates to, "This place is terrible." And if you look that verse up in the Bible, it's the story of Jacob's ladder, and the verse goes on to say something like, "This place is terrible, and it is the gateway to heaven." Now that sounds like a portal to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember, so you were feeling that with your daughter, Jolie, and I had that experience with my mom. And one other time, just to add another example so the listening audience can maybe get a sense of how these things could really happen in energies that are just a bit different than our normal everyday reality, or our perceived reality anyway. Of course, my beloved Jordan, who got killed in the Iraq War. Well, one time when I was staying by myself at Ingrid's apartment as well, up in Rennes le Chateau, Jordan came to me very strong in the portal, and I could feel his energy, and there was such a light, and there was such a love. And you were feeling that way. I was feeling that way with my mom, and I remember feeling that way with Jordan. And I was so thankful when I woke up, because I felt like I had actually gotten another chance to see him and to hug him and to speak with him. And he told me that I needed to be careful when I was walking the landscape in that area, because there would be a time where I would be in danger. And he told me, when that happens, make sure you look up. Look up. And when I woke up, I thought, well, that's the craziest freaking message. I felt great seeing him and experiencing him. We call that a transpersonal experience in the dream time, where you're, a beloved one who's crossed over will connect with you. And the way that it played out was that at the end of that, I think it was a research trip, I was over near the Cave of the Magdalene with Nancy Safford, who's a guide who Renee and I both know, and she was showing us the area, which is where Saunier used to look out of in the Tour Magdala towards that Magdalene cave. And it was, it must have been the spring, because it was really muddy and wet, and my hiking boots, the mud was just getting stuck everywhere. And so we were over there trying to get in the caves. And when I came out of one of them, there was a small hill, if you will, and there was a lot of mud and so forth, so it was hard to keep your footing. And I remember coming out of it, and I remember, for those of you who know my cousin Victor, he was in front of me, and all of a sudden I went flying, and I could have really gotten hurt, because I would have fallen in a certain way where I would have fallen some distance down. But at that moment, Jordan came to me, and he said, look up. And when I did, there was like a tree limb, if you will, that was very pliable, and I grabbed hold of it like Tarzan, right, to swing, and it kept me from going very far down, and I was able to stay where I was, not get seriously hurt. And then Victor was able to somehow get towards me, and we maneuvered through that potential disaster, and everything was okay. So whatever that energy is right by the grotto and the invisible church, the garden, and the church itself, I do believe that there's a portal. Whether it's connected to a time anomaly or a device, I don't know.
I don't either, but it's so interesting, and it just seems to be continually unfolding. This sort of new strand that we've gotten on now with this. But of course, the telluric energy's been something that you've been well aware of. We've been interested in for a long time, and even prior to doing the film Bloodline, which has now been 10 years ago, will be in May.
Wow.
When we were in preparation for that.
10 years.
Isn't that crazy? I was thinking about that today, and I was trying to think of when you and I actually met. it was at least a year before the film was released. I don't know if it was 2 years or a year, but it was sometime before the film was released. So we've probably known each other for close to a dozen years now, I guess.
Wow.
And been on countless trips back and forth across to France, and still
and countless
going.
Conversations trying to process what we experienced.
That's right. That's right. And it just, I remember while we were in preparation or researching, I don't even think the movie had sort of developed yet. I think this was all back in around 2004, when I made my first trip over, and we met with the then mayor of Rennes le Chateau, J.F. Wheelier, and he said, the real mystery of Rennes le Chateau, it isn't gold and treasure, buried treasure. It's the telluric energy. It's the telluric energy. And we thought, oh, yeah, whatever. And then later, that kept coming up again and again. And, of course, we began to notice the energy ourselves and the sort of peculiarity of the energies around Rennes le Chateau, where you can go one day and it'll feel a certain way up there, and then you go another time and it's a completely different feeling or energy. Even the people seem to be different. It's very interesting.
Oh, the light in the dark, there's no doubt. Can I read one more short paragraph from the channeling of Marie Denarneau? Because I think you'll find this interesting.
Oh, yeah, please.
So Marie was talking about that, and there's some things she's saying I'm not willing to share yet. I'm still working through a bit, but she begins to mention the hot pool family. And for those of you who don't know the chateau, Rennes le Chateau, the chateau at the top of the village was the residence of the shall we say, the local noble family, just to keep it simple for now. And their name was Hot Pool. So Marie is talking, and she says, the Hot Pool family needs your attention to put the connections from Cathar roots to what was hidden in this place, what was buried below, and what was taken from here. Yes, Béranger found out the truth of his church and of Mary Magdalene, and it was hard for him to accept this truth. It drove him to madness, not because he had to open his eyes and see, but because he was hunted down.
By whom? That's
well, I will say later on there is a little reference to the Vatican.
That's really interesting. If I could, not to switch up too much, but you posted something from actually your first novel, where at the beginning of the chapters, you would put a short quote from one of the channelings from various different people, different voices, and one was Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
And could you? Is it convenient for you to share a little bit of that? I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I think I can get to it right here. So I posted that the other day because we're going through quite a lot here in America right now.
While you're looking for that, I'll brag a little bit. Gloria wrote a series of 3 books that were novels. And at the beginning of each chapter, as I said, she put a channeled voice of people like Mary Magdalene, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and others. And the Magdalene voice particularly was pretty amazing. And each of those voices were very different, and none of them sounded like Gloria. So I thought they were just really amazing, and people seemed to be very, very drawn to the Magdalene channelings. And so I said, Gloria, you got to put together a book of the channelings. And you hadn't really quite publicly come out big time with your channeling abilities at that time. And so I guess you thought, well, maybe it's the time. So you did that, and they're so good. And now there's a series of 3 of those books that are strictly channeled books of the voice of Mary Magdalene. Really interesting stuff. I would recommend them to anybody if you're interested. And have a look at Gloria's website, www.gloriaamendola.com. You can see her books. You can book sessions with her there. If you're in anywhere near her area, you can go to one of her presentations or Magdalene circles. If you've got a group together, you can bring her to you, and she will do a Magdalene circle or a presentation or both. And also, I'm trying to get her the heck over to France with me in May to give some presentations and maybe do a Magdalene circle or 2. So there you go. So also her books are available on the website. That's why I gave the website in the first place. And also information about any trips that she's taking that you might want to hop along on. I see someone in the chat room, Sarah, says, is Gloria still giving tours? I want to go. So there you go, Sarah.
There we go. Well, I have to say, I channeled for a very long time in private, and I used to invite a few local friends over, and we were on this journey together, and I would feel comfortable. I guess I just didn't feel comfortable. I have a legal background, and so it was always a struggle for me to not to bring this information through and work with it, but to share it publicly. That was kind of the hard part for me. And when you really enjoyed Magdalene's voice at the beginning of novel 2, I said, wow, because René, I think you've softened or you've opened even more, but I know there were times where you were more skeptical, and that's okay. And this was years ago we're talking about, and so that's okay. And I'm thinking, wow, if René really thinks there's something there, maybe I should put it out for public consumption. And so now there's a lot that's going to come this year. I've just decided with everything that's going on in the world, I might as well just put it all out there and just let the chips fall where they may. And so stuff's coming with the founding fathers that is going to really blow people's mind, but it's going to give a very different perspective of what's going on right now. It's pretty intense. But anyway, this is Benjamin Franklin, and it really does connect to our mystery here, because we know Ben Franklin was an honorary Grand Master at the lodge, the Freemasonic Lodge in Carcassonne, which is about 40 minutes from Rennes by car. And there are even whispers that he was with the Jacobites at Bézieux in the Rennes area planning the American Revolution. I can't find any sources on that. That's hearsay. But we can place him in the area, and I bet 10 to 1, the curious soul that he was, if he made it to Carcassonne, he made it to Rennes le Chateau. Yeah, because they knew about these events. So here's what Benjamin Franklin has to say. So much has already been said. This book is a testament to a wordsmith in action. But I want to add one final piece to the puzzle. When I spent time in France, I learned of many things that I did not expect. I learned of teachings and places that were imbued with the wisdom of the Creator. I spent much time there acquiring this knowledge. It was the power of the stars that flowed through these locations, marked by our brothers in arms, the Knights Templar. Would you believe me if I told you their skills guided the American Revolution? Would you believe me if I told you they came to these lands long before Christopher Columbus, that they made certain preparations for the birth of America? They are watching from the place beyond time, guiding those who are here to finish their work. It was always agreed they spoke the voice of our ancestors, from the great architect to the Lady of the Waters. How they knew what they did was always a mystery to me. They are requesting that you step forth in this volatile time and believe in the power of your presence. They are asking if you are willing to live your life as a master of your destiny. And you know what I got from that, reading it, because I'm always finding something new? In this John Worrell Keeley book that you turned me on to, Free Energy Pioneer, There's Benjamin Franklin said, it was the power of the stars that flowed through these locations marked by the Templars. They are watching from the place beyond time, guiding those who are here to finish their work. When I read that, I just wondered, it is often whispered in many different written materials that the Templars had somehow mastered time travel. And while that resonates with me, there's not much that I can put to that to prove it, if you will. I don't know if any of us can prove something like that, but there's something about that statement that has always resonated with me. And I wonder if it somehow has to do with devices and the science and the energy that people like Keeley and Tesla and even Steiner, like they were all familiar with this energy and what its capabilities were.
Yeah, it could be. And, and there were those who seemed to be aware of that and seeking it out, like the Nazis, for instance, who were, after these, devices, these religious artifacts that were thought to have been energy devices. They were after the secrets of the area of Rennes le Chateau. They hired Otto Rahn, the archaeologist, to research and search and explore around Montségur for secret documents or whatever he was looking for. We don't really know. But certainly it all seems to stem back to some type of energy source. And I think it was Helena Blavatsky who said of John Keely's work, this John Worrell Keely, this free energy inventor, that what he was really onto was something so important and so powerful that if people with ill intent, got hold of it, it would be terrible. But it was at the heart of the biggest secrets of the universe.
Wow.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, it's just, I keep saying to myself, especially in the last few months since my last trip to Rennes, the Church of Mary Magdalene, I found so many new things in there, and I understood the higher mind behind it, whether it was Boudet, somebody behind Abbé Boudet giving Saunière the instruction, somebody who understood the master builders was definitely inputting the design of this tiny little church in this village in the middle of nowhere. And you keep going to a place and you keep going to a place with the layers of mystery that the Rennes area has. You see different things at different times. It takes quite a while to really drill down in this mystery. 18 years and running, and I feel like there's still layers of truth I can't get to yet. None of us can. We're trying. We're all trying really hard, and each piece helps, but it has to be something that has eluded our understanding both intellectually and metaphysically, because if it wasn't, we would have figured it out by now. Yeah,
I think so too. I think it's a mixture. It's a combination that hasn't, it's like a, like a Rubik's Cube or a combination lock that people have been applying certain pieces to, but there's that one piece that, sort of makes it all fit together that we haven't been looking at. And it could be something to do with, metaphysics or, the spiritual, I don't think religion would be the right word, but it certainly seems to be something, much more intangible, but actual. And when we get to that place where, I guess we've got a way to quantify and measure and everything, which we can do with a lot of things, like with the telluric currents. That's all scientifically provable and measurable. And certainly,
God, it
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly as, energetic beings, sort of electrical beings that we are, certainly that would have an effect on us. And I think vice versa. I think there is an interaction that goes on, sort of between the human and the places that the human being visits. There's an energy exchange. And I think places of like pilgrimage and, like those areas around there where people come for centuries after centuries, like Rennes le, where people have come, to take the curative waters. I think just the fact that people have come there for, positive outcome, for healing, I think that has imbued some of that there. There was, of course it was already there, but I think that has enhanced it and continues to enhance it, that people continue to come there and take the waters.
And I'm beginning to believe that even in an environment like that, this might sound strange to people, but because I do so much earth energy work and, work on the land and how being in a proportional landscape, something that has, we call it divine measurement or sacred geometry, it's a certain numeric ratio that was always used by the ancients in terms of building great temples. Think of ancient Greece and other great cultures, and also harmony, and Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. It's encoded within us too, and how that ripples out towards us, and how the human body and biofield really responds to that. It's unmistakable there, like no other place I have ever seen. I'm sure there are other places and other places that resonate more. I know the UK is also a place of import for me, and I'm sure everybody has their place, but it's just, I think that the earth, and the indigenous people, of course, think this worldwide. I think the earth is alive and living, and I think when people come and there's a co-creative flow between people, human beings, and the earth and the land, there's some kind of energy that seems to be sustained in a place like that, and it's very palpable.
Yeah, and and also, we talk about Rennes le, and people have gone there, for centuries for those reasons, but also there's some extremely important archaeological aspects around Rennes le. It seems like, for many years, at least I focused on Rennes le Chateau, and then the longer I began to spend time there, the more I became drawn to Rennes le and the history there, and as well as the mystery and the energy. And I have to say too, Rennes le just feels different than Rennes le Chateau. Rennes le Chateau has some strangeness, a high strangeness to it that I feel is palpable. And Rennes le has a different feeling, a more relaxed and sort of flowing feeling, and maybe that's because it's right there on the River Salles.
Well, also, too, if you look at the different geometries in the area put forth by not just Henry Lincoln, but other people as well, Templar Mechanics has a few stunning drawings of Rennes le. And when you basically, when you look at it, it shows Rennes le sitting right in the vesica Pisces, so where two circles come together in that oval or womb shape that is created by that intersection, that womb is where Rennes le is, in that area. So the more I look at it and the more I go there, and when we stay at Christina's and you're right on the river, and you can just enjoy the sound of the river and the magic around that area, it really, in my opinion, has something to do. You feel enveloped in that location, and to me, it does feel very womb-like. And also, too, not this year, but the year before, when I was in Rennes le, like I really understood the Celtic/Druid fingerprint on Rennes le, the seat of Isis, the Devil's Armchair, whatever you want to call it, the Source de Madeleine, the pool behind behind Christina's across the river in Rennes le Chateau on the way up to Montferrand. These are magical, magical places, and that whole timeline unfolds there. It's just amazing the layers and the levels that come into your consciousness the more that you go. I don't know. But there's another quote I wanted to share with the audience in the book that you had, The Free Energy Pioneer, John Worrell Keeley. Near the end, it says, in the tale, The Festival, written in 1923, Lovecraft describes a church in which a tomb is found beneath an altar. Lovecraft modeled his church after a real church, and they talk Lovecraft's seemingly fanciful tale of a crypt just before the pulpit was proven to be accurate. The crypt was not located under the present altar. This is the Church of Mary Magdalene in Rennes le Chateau, but another older hidden altar. Lovecraft's fictional tale, based on fact that was later known, echoes Saunier's discovery of a crypt in his church in Rennes le Chateau. The reason why I read that one is because in this book in particular, Jules Verne is really an interesting character in this mystery, but there are other authors, and they were putting forth information that at that time was probably deemed still too crazy or dangerous to put out to the general public. So they had to code it, and they coded it in fictional novels. But that's just one excerpt of what was said in this novel turned out to be true. So these people in this timeline seem to have insider information. So if you're listening to the show and you thought, oh my God, René and Gloria really lost it with some of the things they're thinking about with Rennes le Chateau, these things are bearing themselves out, and it could be an ancient technology we don't understand that produces a certain effect that creates what we feel is magic.
I mean, it's as good an explanation as any, and there certainly are a lot of things that point in that direction. Now, whether or not that is a technology that comes from the landscape, or whether there is some sort of device that's been hidden there, that'd be interesting to know for sure. But the area is, I mean, you've got nearby, Montsegur, the tragedy of the Cathars there. You have, the rich, Templar history. I think there's, there were 5 commanderies, Templar commanderies that surrounded the tiny, tiny village of Rennes le Chateau. Now, why? What were they guarding? What were they, protecting there? It's very, very mysterious how these things were set up. And then, of course, the landscape itself seems to have had some sort of rhyme and reason.
Can I share something? Can I share something that it could provide a little bit more insight? I agree with you. Those places are marked, and we have to keep asking why. Why were they marked? What were they protecting? You know how we walk into the church and you have Asmodeus or Pan or Rex Mundi, whatever you want to call that crouching figure that got damaged. I think it's fully repaired now. And then the holy water stoop, and then the archangels below. If I don't know how many of you out there were raised Catholic, but even you, Renee, if you make the sign of the cross, how do you make it? You start at your forehead, right?
Right.
And then you go forehead to chest.
Yep.
To left to right.
Yes.
Right? That's
exactly.
So when you're making the sign of the cross, that's basically how we were all taught. Yep. And one thing I learned this year was that if you follow the angels in the holy water stoop as you enter the church, the terrible is this place, you end up, the angels make the sign from top to bottom to right to left.
Yes.
We're making it from left to right. So they're doing the complete opposite
Well, I mean, that kind of goes along with, the Stations of the Cross that are common in Catholic churches. The 14 Stations of the Cross are in reverse order to what you normally see.
Exactly. So somebody who's building that, who designed that church is saying, hey, pay attention. Things are not what they seem. Like, it's kind of like the hangman in the tarot. And so in a book that I'll give the title to shortly, they offer a reason for that. Now, I'm not saying it's ultimate truth, but I thought it was interesting. They said the sign of the cross ends on the left, the female, performed according to the Gnostic and the Greek Orthodox Church tradition.
Oh.
So I wondered if they were suggesting that in this place, in the Church of Mary Magdalene in Rennes le Chateau, what they were protecting was the feminine and the Gnostic experience of life, of... I don't know. Of what? I don't know. The sign of the cross is backwards.
And of course, the Cathars were a Gnostic sect, Gnostic Christian sect. And, they're heavy in the region. And there are still people in the region that claim to be Cathar. And there were, at the time of Saunier, Cathars or Neo-Cathars. And I think Sandy in the chat room mentioned that a few moments ago. So there very well could have been a sympathy for the heretics.
So what does this...
They might have been heretics themselves.
That's true. So when I'm channeling Marie Denarnaud by the Tour Magdala, I'll repeat it. I said this before, but she said the hot pool family needs your attention to put the connections from Cathar roots to what was hidden in this place.
Well, we know that when, Montsegur was breached by the Inquisition armies, that they basically made a deal to let them have enough days to stay in order to pass a holy feast day of theirs and do their ceremonies before they would voluntarily come down the mountain and, walk into the fires as they did. And during that time, we know that there were 3 monks that escaped, that rappelled down the side of the mountain and went in different directions. But I know at least one of them ended up in Rennes le Chateau. So, perhaps that's part of what was secreted in the crypt underneath the church or somewhere in the church. We're talking about this idea, this crazy idea I came up with for a Rennes union in May in Rennes le Chateau, encouraging all researchers, writers, buffs, interested parties to join us down in the region. And I've been getting interest from, various places. The local press is going to cover our screening of Bloodline, which is wonderful. The Rennes le Chateau Gazette, which I think is really, really great. But also, I got a note from a gentleman in Paris named Paul Saucez, who, as you know, Gloria, and I know you have a copy, did a wonderful presentation called The Tomb of the Lords about the church at Rennes le Chateau. He did a deep, deep study of all the renovations and changes that Saunier made to the church. Some of them were really interesting, like the fact that he brought the interior walls in about, I want to say almost a foot or something. So there's actually a space between the walls of the exterior and interior of the church. It's very deep. I wonder, why would he do that? Why would he decrease the size of the interior and leave that space to the exterior walls? Is something hidden in those walls? We don't know, but I'm excited that Paul Saucez is talking about coming down. He wants me to keep him posted on anything that's going on during that time. And hopefully he's just one of the people that'll turn up. I'm looking forward to a huge, meeting and exchange of ideas and wonderful conversations. And but he's done some wonderful work on the church that I'd love to have a chance to sit down with him and ask him a bunch of questions about.
And he sources his commentary very well in that CD.
He does.
He provides so many wonderful sources of where he got his information and how he figured out what he puts forth.
Yep.
I have come across a reason why there might be space between the walls of the church. Again, this idea of the master builders understanding measurement and proportion. You had a chance to look at that YouTube video of the January 17th blue apples phenomenon that I had sent. I posted it on Facebook too.
I did. That was really wild. Yeah.
Now, that's not my find in any way, shape, or form. I found it because Magda was nice enough to find a book for me that was sold across from Christina's in the little shop by a couple in Rennes le Chateau, Sus Krassel and Kaj Liliendahl. I don't know if I have the names pronounced correctly, but it's called Rennes le Chateau, Maria Magdalena, and the Master Builders. And so they had to go specifically to get that footage that they posted online. They were there in 2011. They had to go back in 2012 to actually get that phenomenon of the red ankh above Jesus's head on the pulpit. But this is what they say about it that I thought was interesting, and I thought supports this idea of the master builders, whoever these people were behind the scenes that were feeding this info through Boudet, Abby Boudet. As if by magic, an ankh appears above Jesus' head. We experienced this light phenomenon in 2011, but had to wait until the 17th January 2012 to document the whole process. It can be viewed on YouTube. In order to get the entire phenomenon to appear, the master builders must have incorporated astronomy and geometry into their work methods, as well as perfect masonry work, and they must have had to obtain perfect measurements of the pulpit, which was constructed by the Guiscard firm in Toulouse. And I believe the Guiscard supplied the Stations of the Cross, and I do believe Guiscard himself was a Freemason, but I'm not positive. So we begin to really unravel a much deeper story of how precise somebody was to encode this message that we're just now being able to figure out. And we still haven't figured it out.
Yep. I'm concerned I'm not going to make it out of this world with that secret. I'm going to have to find out on the other side, possibly. But I'm going to keep looking, no matter what.
Oh, it's something I can't walk away from. I'm happily obsessed, and I just keep going because every little piece along the way is just it's so important. Like last night, somebody alerted me to a film on PBS on Nova about Petra in Jordan on the Frankincense Trail, and I wanted to watch it, but not for the obvious reasons, but because there is some Templar connection of Ralph de Soudelay, an English Templar who was said or whispered or known to have excavated in that area and possibly brought home Old Testament type artifacts to England from that area. And there's a lot around that story we don't have time for tonight. But here again, I'm watching this and seeing this beautiful terrain and then seeing this higher mind of how they did some amazing engineering with water into one of the driest locations on the face of the earth. And I just wondered, how did the Templars figure out what was there? How did they always have the inside track? Just like with Rennes le Chateau and the mysteries, how did they know about these points in the earth and map them out? And even if they did have physical treasure that they since moved, like why were they always the ones of their timeline to fall into this information. Like Ben Franklin said, he never could figure out how they knew what they knew.
Yeah,
don't you ever wonder that, even in relation to Rennes, like how the hell did they know these things?
Yeah, it's a mystery. How did they know? Of course they were connected to a lot of, ancient families who maybe shared information. A lot of them were from some of these families. Maybe this was some of this information that's passed down, through the generations of families that, were kept in. This is some of the information that's kept by, all these so-called secret societies that we talk about. The Freemasons, the Priory of Zion.
And I think ultimately the Essenes and the Rosicrucians. But even then, even if you bring it back to the timeline of the Essenes and the Rosicrucians, and we can place Essenes in France, so that's not even a stretch by any means. Where'd they get it from? And was it advanced technologies and information that they somehow acquired, even if they didn't understand it?
Possibly. Is it something that they stumbled across in their digging around under the temple in Jerusalem? Or was it something they already were aware of when they went there?
Well, I think they knew they had to retrieve something that their ancestors had left behind.
And
but if you think the quality of life at the time of the Templars, it wasn't like there were optimal living conditions in the world. There was a lot of awful stuff going on, and survival, daily survival, was a big deal. And yet, how did they have their fingertips in the pulse on all of this esoteric and powerful information? And there's no bigger mystery from where that whole story emanates from than there are a few interesting locations on the earth, but none is more layered with so many levels of mystery than the Rennes le Chateau region.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how, and it just keeps sort of coming forth with more and more. But, ever since I first became aware of the place, back in, as I said at the beginning of the show in 1982 with Holy Blood, Holy Grail, of course, the village and in the part in the book that dealt with Rennes le Chateau was all very unfamiliar to me. And I know that I was particularly drawn to the information in the area about the Cathars at the time. And that's what actually drew me there the first time I went. And, I had been wanting to go. But the first time I went was very interesting because I went there with my business partner, Bruce Burgess, and we were meeting up with one of the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Michael Bagent, the late Michael Bagent. And so that was when I really became educated about the village and what the history was and the mystery, the sort of modern mystery, the Saunier mystery. But the Saunier mystery harks back to so much. I mean, how far does it go back? Is it a Visigothic treasure? Is it, heretical documents? Is it something that's so ancient, that we can't even conceive of what it might be yet? Is it something about this great secret about some powerful device? And when we talk about device, what is it? Is it a piece of equipment? Is it the Ark of the Covenant? Or is it something that's actually built into the landscape? These are all the questions and more.
I've been reading a book. I don't even know how to say this, but let me just read this quick quote, and then I'll say what I'm going to say. I know it's going to sound crazy, but it's okay. There's one particular author in this book, and it's called the Atlantis Blueprint. And this author believes that the Templars discovered ancient maps beneath Solomon's temple, which they used to position their important bases at locations that mirror the geography of the Yukon Pole. It seems that Rennes le Chateau is not the only site associated with the Templars in the pole of nearly 100,000 years ago.
100,000.
Yeah, and there's so much more to support that. I mean, that's just a little snippet that I'm going to throw out there, and this is the kind of the absolute come full circle for me, 18 years of study research. But I think the title of the book gets where I'm going with the Atlantis Blueprint. And somehow advanced societies that were privy to even more advanced technologies were very mobile in our world. They were just as active, if not more so, than we are now. And I believe that that imprint was left upon that region. And that's why when I mentioned terraforming, I believe that the people that were there had to create that kind of environment almost as a biosphere. Just like when we space travel, we have to wear certain equipment in order to get out on the surface of the planet, or even traveling in space to be able to survive it. We have to wear certain gear and certain equipment. We have to have certain conditions mirrored to us so that we can stay alive. And I know it sounds crazy, but that's where 18 years of research is bringing me. And ironically, the first time I set foot near the Poussin tomb, that area near Arc, the very first time I got out of the car with a group of people, I remember looking up at the area of those peaks that are supposedly mirrored in Poussin's painting, The Shepherds of Arcadia. And out of my mouth, just spontaneously, I wasn't thinking, I just looked. And I said, this is about Atlantis. And that was, many, many years ago. And the people that I were with looked at me like, what? What did she just say? And they just ignored me because it just didn't make any sense. And now it's coming full circle. So when I read that part about the 100,000 years and the idea of terraforming, that's ultimately where my research is taking me. And I'm just going to go there and see what happens, because nobody else can really come up with a definitive, answer that this is it. So we have to keep making these leaps, because the great mystery that is there tells us something very interesting about our world that we perhaps have not been ready to fully accept yet.
Possibly. The chat room's been really lively tonight. In fact, New Guy just said, are there reported UFO sightings there? Well, of course, there are lots of UFO sightings reported. I know certainly in the area of Bugarash Mountain, which is an amazing place. It's called the Upside Down Mountain because the bottom is a lot older than the top, or vice versa. Yeah, that's how it goes. It's like it flipped at some point. And yep. They call it an upside down mountain. It was, sort of a favorite place of the author Jules Verne that you mentioned earlier. And his book, Clovis Dardentor, there was a character called Captain Bugarash. And it's thought that his book, Journey to the Center of the Earth, that he was talking about Bugarash. It was inspired by Mount Bugarash. So that's the one where people say they see UFOs coming in and out of. Interestingly, we've talked about, the secret society called the Priory of Zion, and one of the purported members of that group was a gentleman that we interviewed in Bloodline called Gino Sondri. and his wife is an artist, a painter and an artist. And I remember I believe her last name is Torres. Oh gosh, I can't remember her first name. I know Sandy's in the chat room. She'll type it out for me. But anyway, she, Inez Torres, I believe it is. Anyway, she had some paintings that were hanging in one of the shops in Rennes le Chateau that I saw, and there was a picture of Mount Bugarash with a UFO over it. I saw, and I took note that was one of her paintings. But anyhow, yeah, there are reported UFO sightings there, and like I mentioned and hinted at earlier, a lot of times our research has taken us into places that we didn't want it to go, and it has gone into the area of UFOs or visitors or extraterrestrials or ancient astronauts, possibly. But the thing to do, I think, is it's a mistake to say, I don't want it to go there. Just let it go where it goes and see where you come out on the other end. I think you have to keep an open mind. That's the only way we're going to figure anything out. If you don't close any doors, don't dismiss things out of hand, just because we don't understand it.
Yeah, and I think, science and technology is moving us into realms like we don't even realize how far advanced artificial intelligence or AI is right now, and even the secret weaponry our own government has in the technologies. So if we really knew about that, then some of what we were saying right now probably would sound very normal or very much, on the level of those things. But because we don't fully understand that right now, we still think it's a little crazy, but maybe 10 years ago, or maybe at the time of Jules Verne writing, and encoding their novels and the rest of the gang that were all hanging out and pretty blown away by this mystery, they had to encode it. And so for all these years and decades and so forth, people it's almost like as we understand, and this is just an element of those who really truly love the area, find it mystical, weird, mysterious, funny, ridiculous, all of the above. We're really, because we everything has been put on the table, but perhaps for those of us who are deeply enchanted by the Rennes mystery, maybe it's part of our own evolution as human beings, because like you were saying, if you just keep following where the synchronicities lead you, it has to be authentic for you. And for me, I still have resistance on the whole ET part of it, but I know that's where it's going to end up. It may not be ET in the way I understand it, and that would be cool. I would like it to be something kind of different. Then I'm okay with that, because that's an authentic journey. So maybe that's the whole meaning behind the Grail.
Yes. Yep. And someone was kind enough to put the correct name of that artist in the chat room for me. It's Inez de la Torre. That's what her name is. And she was the one who I saw the paintings of the UFOs over Bugarash in the village of Rennes le Chateau. Very, very interesting. Gosh, we're winding down just a few more minutes. Want to remind everybody to check out Gloria's material on her website at www.gloriaamendola.com, and that's Amendola, gloriaamendola.com. And you can hit her up on Facebook if she happens to be on there. I know you don't like Facebook that much, Gloria, but you've kind of been dragged kicking and screaming onto it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I was. I didn't want to be on it for so long, but I finally, it's been several years now, but somebody made my page for me finally. And I said, oh, all right, I'll do it. But it is a useful tool, but it's also useful to a lot of people that it shouldn't be using it for a tool. And I'm not going to get political on this show.
Yeah, there we go.
But there you go. So, gosh, I hope your schedule permits, Gloria, for you to get over there with us in May.
I'm definitely work it out. I really am.
I love it. I love being there when you're there. We have such a good time, and
we do.
We got to go do some stomping around together or on the countryside. I think we can make some new discoveries. Oh my goodness, we've got a minute left to the music. Oh, by the way, don't forget also to look at Gloria's website for booking sessions with her. She is an intuitive, and she books private sessions, which she can do remotely. In person if you're in her neighborhood, but remotely if you're not. So I would suggest that to all, and I would encourage you all, if you're interested in this subject, to try and join us in May in Southwest France. I know it's not easy to get there. I usually have to work my way over, but I'm splurging this time. I'm just going. So, the flights are amazing, though. Prices are incredible right now. I can't believe
they are. What is up with that? It's amazing.
I've never paid this little in all the years I've been going since 2004. So I would suggest people check your prices. I understand it's only from the USA that the prices are really low right now.
Okay.
But anyway, everybody, we're going to have Gloria back again, of course. We have to have her back every now and then to catch up on her latest research and to gab about the Rennes le Chateau mysteries. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks, Gloria.